Well, Steph, thank you so much for being here and doing this interview with us and sharing your story with our audience. I'm so thrilled to have you. You run a company called houseofbachelorette.com, and this is one of three right now that you're running, but this was the first that you started. And you researched it back in 2008, and then you started it in 2009. I want to give our audience just a little bit of background about where you are today, and then we'll go back in time and do a little flashback and talk about how you got to kind of where you're at today. You are, revenue-wise, about to hit $1 million, is that right? Or over $1 million?
Yes, over $1 million annually this year.
Okay. Oh, I just love that. That's awesome. That's huge. And you have 7 employees currently, and you just moved from your house to an office, which good and bad, but mainly good, I'm assuming, getting out of the house because you really couldn't control, or you're growing so much that you kind of needed to get out of the house and get a space.
Yes, we outgrew the house.
Yes, it sounds like you did. Let's see, you said also, because we talked before we started hitting record, that you pretty much shut down. You work 6 days a week and you shut down business, which I totally admire, right about 1 o'clock every day because you want to maintain flexibility and autonomy in your business. So I think that's awesome, and I think it's amazing, and it just goes to show that you can still be a really profitable business and not work your tail off. Your business, just so I can tell the audience, it's not a retail drop shipping business, which I was initially thinking it was. You basically hold inventory, and I want to talk about that for anybody that's actually wanting to start a company like that, kind of how you came to that conclusion about doing that type of business. But first, I'm really curious. When you tell people that, this is the business that you have, I'm just curious, what kind of reactions do you get when you tell them that you sell bachelorette party items?
It's so funny. For 20 years, I was in retail, and I was a buyer for major companies, and always ladies' fashions. So White House Black Market, Chico's, Sears headquarters is where I started, all over. And so when I told even my colleagues this, you should have seen the looks. Oh my gosh. It was hilarious, and everybody looked at me like I had lost a few screws. But I headed down this avenue because I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do when you're launching a new business is finding that niche where you feel like there's a need in the market. And I had been my sister's maid of honor the year before, and she lived all the way across the country from me on the East Coast. And so I had tried to buy a lot of things. I was her maid of honor, so I was doing her bachelorette party on the web, and I was afraid to give my credit card information to the sites I was finding out there. And I was like, I wish Target or somebody normal carried bachelorette party stuff. It's like, we're not prudes, but, I didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
So I had filed it away as an idea. And really when I started looking at building my own company, that first season, it was just the idea that kept popping up into my head that I could really do this and do it better than anybody had that was out there. And make it for, just a more mainstream person. So it was really the idea that just kept coming back into my head. And I finally just took that leap. And I haven't really looked back. It's fun to tell people I have a lot of pride in the business, and of course, they go there when you tell them. They're like, "Oh, what? Bachelorette party?" But when they look at my site, they kind of see, "Oh my gosh, that's really cool, and it's a lot of fun." And it is one of the most fun times. I mean, I've been to a few bachelorette parties. Let me tell you, they are a blast, and they're those nights with your best friends that you just carry with you. I mean, I'm pretty old now. I don't get out to bachelorette parties. But I'll, talk to my best friends on the phone, and it's one of those nights you just think about, remember right before your wedding when we went out, and we had such a great time. It's just like those nights you just keep with you forever, even when you're older.
Yeah. No, it's true. And that's what I love about your business. When I went to your website, it looks fun, it looks different, and you're touching people. I mean, your customers are in a happy time. They're going through this change, they're going through this transition, and in a small way you're, a part of that because you're helping them plan these parties, which, that's fun. And like we were saying in the beginning, we were talking, I mean, you get to help throw a party. I mean, how fun is that?
It is so much fun. fun.
Yeah.
And I get to come up with ideas and listen to what they want and develop products behind it. So I really do get to use everything that I used, when I was a buyer all those years. And it's just, actually more fun than dresses and all the other things I used to buy, actually.
Yeah, you get to sell pink boas and,
Yeah, boas and veils.
Right. And specialized cakes that we won't mention, I'm sure. But,
cakes yet, but I'm going to file that idea.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. That's good. You should. Well, what I noticed about your website, and this is a topic that I think comes up, for my audience, it came up for me, is, people have ideas and they say, okay, I want to start this type of business or go into this type of niche. But then they have this little voice in their head that says, somebody's already doing that and they're doing it well. I mean, I can poke this hole or poke that hole, but they're doing it pretty well. So, why would somebody want to come to me for, this item if there's already so much competition out there? What would you say to that? I mean, how did you differentiate yourself and how did you really communicate that? Because you can say, here's how I'm unique, but how did your customers really find that out?
Yeah, it takes a while. I mean, it's not overnight. And you really have to believe in the idea yourself and what your conviction is that makes you unique and better than your competition. I think when you go at it from that point of view and you really develop it from the ground up around that idea, I think the customer recognizes it. I have a website where you're not afraid to give your mom the URL and have her chip in. It's like you won't see that on any of those other sites, but it's kind of funny. I think it's just having the faith that there are people out there that are looking for the same thing you are, and sometimes using your gut instinct as a customer is a really good one. I think people can trust that. There's other people that are having the same problem you are out there, finding what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's true. Because when I went to your website, I noticed that, and I actually just did some Google searches on, bachelorette party supplies or bachelorette party items, and just try to, use some keywords that people would be using to search on you. And your site comes up pretty, it always comes up on the first page. It's either 2 or 3, the third link. But then, I started clicking on other people's sites, and I was trying to see, what's kind of different. And I noticed, which was, I don't know if it's on purpose, but I noticed you had an About Me page or an About Us page, where some of the other ones didn't. And it looked, more corporate, and there were also, like we talked earlier before we were recording, that, they had other things that they were selling, and they weren't just completely specialized in the bachelorette space. They were selling, wedding items and baby shower items. So I thought that was a kind of interesting differentiation for you. Is it seemed more personal?
Yeah, I think our competition is actually kind of trying to hide who they are in some ways. One of the number one sites, they've been around since the 90s. They are affiliated with, very nasty things that I wouldn't want to repeat.
Oh, really?
That's what I found out when I was doing my research when I was shopping, and that's kind of what scared me, that I would be getting, emails on my personal ID that I would give them, and, for all kinds of products, then I'd get on some list, you're always afraid to, Google, end up on some crazy list of people. That's kind of what scares me about some of my competitors, that they're coming at it from a different direction, a different part of the industry. We're really not a part of any of that, and we're just, trying to have fun.
Yeah.
Have a party.
Yeah, and have a party, exactly, and give good customer service. It sounds like is another way, you really differentiate yourself, because you put yourself out there and you specialize in just this area. So, I noticed that when I was doing my research and looking at your site, and I think it's a good lesson for other people is kind of figure out how you really can be different, and how can you, use your website, use social media to kind of communicate that in a professional way. I'm sure you don't go after specific competitors and say, oh, they're, don't go with them kind of thing. So you just do it in a very professional way.
Yeah, I don't worry about the competition. I go and look at their sites, and I just want to see, try to find new ways of besting them. And a lot of times I'll go on their sites and I'll see our stuff or our ideas start to appear. They're watching us. But which is flattering. I should be flattered.
Yes.
We're always got to be on to the next thing.
That's right.
That's for you. But one of those situations where, I think if you really focus on your customer and go forward in making your decisions based on the customers that you have, I think you'll always make the right decision. Don't be bogged down by what the trend is or what competition is doing.
I love that. That's great. That's great advice. Well, I want to kind of go back in time and see if you can go back to the space you were in when you first got started. Which I know that was back in 2009, 2008, 2009 time period. So people have ideas, and I know I felt this way when I first started getting into freelancemom.com, where I just got overwhelmed with the amount of things that I felt like I needed to do. I need to update the website, and I need to figure out how to monetize it, and I need to figure out the newsletter, and all of these things kind of started overwhelming me. So I'm just curious, when you had this idea, what were some of those first things that you did? Because obviously you got started with something, and I think I read, you were an avid learner, and you went out and kind of tried to learn everything you can learn about website design. But were you, what was your process when you first got started?
Yeah, I always stress that whenever I do interviews. I really had just a niche that I knew about businesses, being a buyer for all those years, and I had been a store manager and things like that, but I didn't know everything. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about the web. So I went to my local community college, and I signed up for tons of classes. I took web design classes, and I had no interest in designing my own website. I just wanted to know what they were talking about. It's like I just wanted to know the language and what could be done. So when somebody tells me, we can't do that. Oh yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. I wanted to know what was up. So I started with that. I took books. I took Photoshop. Those things in the beginning really helped me to fast forward the whole process, because just knowing what you're looking for, and you don't have to be an expert, but just having some knowledge in a bunch of different areas really, really helps when you're making decisions and that employees are coming to you asking questions. And I think that if you're going onto the web, you need to start with probably the website development. And I remember sitting there with paper and pens and drawing out what I thought I wanted this website to look like, and surfing the web and trying to find examples, because that's the first thing they'll ask you. What are the 6 sites that cite you? And once you kind of start that process and start shopping around for those sites, every new thing kind of opens another question. It's like, I feel like it's like almost a chain that opens up in front of you, a little path.
Right.
Because once you start with the site, they're going to ask you these questions, and then you're really going to think about your business, and then the marketing aspect comes up. Do you want a Facebook icon? Well, yeah, I guess I need a Facebook icon on that page, and then it kind of, I need to get that page, and now you're thinking about marketing, and, would you like a mailing list? Oh, geez, I do want a mailing list.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah.
It's like one thing leads to the next, and then eventually you're like, oh my gosh, I have these marketing things on paper, and I'm going to launch, my Pinterest site, and all kinds of things start going. And I really think that people shouldn't be afraid to start out small. Don't be afraid to start at the tiniest little thing where it's just you sitting in your house and doing this, because, that's the way I started. Yeah. And I remember the day when I hired my first employee, and I was like, am I truly going to get some employee to come into my basement and help me pack orders for this website that I just dreamed up 6 months ago? It was like, wow. It was such a monumentous day when she came for the interview, and she was another mom who wanted to do something while the kids were at preschool.
Yeah.
I had my baby on my hip during the interview. It was like one of those situations where you're just kind of like, it's surreal. But I think that if I had tried to hire 10 people until my basement was stuck or moved somewhere quickly, it wouldn't have been the right pace for me. I think that it's okay to start small, and it's okay to let that road unfold, and for it to be a learning process. And I think that journey probably makes you better as you go along the way.
Yeah.
Versus just hiring everything out to other people and not really absorbing everything that's happening and knowing it all.
Yeah, that's a great point, because some people just think, well, I'm going to outsource this function because I'm not interested in it. I'm going to outsource this, outsource that. But then they kind of do lose some of the, learning of what you really need to do to actually run a business, and learning about yourself probably along the way too. I'm sure on how you handle certain situations, and your own creative process that you have to go through, as you're creating all these different things. So
yeah, and it's important that it was your idea, and it's important that you keep your vision, and it becomes what you want it to become, and not let somebody else take it over.
Yeah, no, that's true. So you said website development is kind of one of those first things that somebody should do, to get started. Are there other things? So once they get the website up and launching, what other steps do you think they should take kind of in that first, 6 months?
I think that there's at the beginning, you're trying to do things on a budget because you don't have the sales to merit a lot of expense. So I think the first thing you do is kind of all those things you can do for free. That's what I did. You're submitting your URL to every place on the web that will list it for free. The yellow pages, Google Maps, whoever will take it, and you're, just out there creating your Facebook page, telling your friends to like it, just drumming up whatever you can and trying to get the word out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to start. And then once I had a little marketing budget, I did choose to do AdWords.
Okay.
It was the right thing for my business. Now, just last year, I actually went to a Google class on AdWords and to become even more of an expert.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. Luckily, they had one here in Seattle, so I didn't have to travel.
Oh, that's great.
But it's one of those things that, like I said, becoming an expert, and not even an expert, just having some knowledge in all those different facets really helps. I mean, I can't imagine the expense that I would pay if I hired, a firm when I was early on to do all those kinds of things. You're really having to rely on yourself a lot.
Yeah.
So it does take a lot of learning.
Yeah.
But I find that AdWords for a lot of businesses is a great place to start after you've done all the free things like social media.
Okay.
Because it is very targeted and it's very easy to control your budget. So I found that it was one of those things that I could really get my finger on what was going on, and I saw a lot of results because it wasn't kind of throwing money out there and wondering if anybody ever saw it. But people who are looking for bachelorette party supplies have clicked on that and have Googled that at that exact moment that they're wanting to purchase. And so I would recommend that as probably a first step for anybody that just got their first marketing budget.
Yeah. And so when it comes to marketing, so you started out using AdWords and you saw the success because it's all testable kinds of stuff.
Yes.
What would you say now that you're at the point where you're at? What marketing works best for you at this point? Is it still AdWords? Is it SEO? Is it referrals? Is it?
It's. I think that you shouldn't underestimate the power of your own blog. And I remember when I was waiting for the developers to create my site, I was writing blog articles. That's what I was doing with my spare time and just getting them ready. And then I uploaded them all, and they kind of went out into space, and people started clicking on them. But that, I think the first 6 months was probably one of my biggest. And then I would say Facebook, and then more recently Pinterest.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're in the wedding industry, probably not every industry, but in the wedding industry, Pinterest tends to be important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you've learned along the way since you've been doing this kind of what marketing efforts really work. I mean, yeah. Have you done anything like completely outlandish to get sales or to get people to your site? Where you're like,
now
wow.
that we're a little bigger, once in a while we have customers from TV shows and things like that, and so I'll send them extra samples for PR and little letters saying, we'd love to offer something to a star. That's always fun. I mean, I find that outlandish. The thought of, some star wearing something that we came up with, but that's more for our rhinestone business.
Yeah, yeah.
The other day, we sent something to someone who worked at Oprah's magazine, and then we sent just a couple days ago off to something for the Dave Letterman show. We made an I Love Dave tank top for one of his executive assistants who bought some items from us.
That's so funny. Does that feel weird, like the whole idea of PR to you? Is that kind of foreign to you, or?
It feels like, for some reason, as far as marketing goes, the idea of things like that happening for free do seem really nice to me.
They are.
But it's one of those things that it seems like it could be a full-time job.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things that's a little overwhelming. So now I'm trying to hire someone to focus on that part of the business.
Oh, that's good.
Just a part-time position, but I'm just now getting there where it seems like it's, too much for me to manage.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I want to talk about kind of the business aspect of it in relation to the fact that you actually hold inventory. So
Sure.
what was your thinking when you were trying to decide whether, or what kind of business model you wanted to use, whether you were just a retail drop shipper or if you were going to be the actual person that actually holds inventory? What helped you make that decision?
Well, having been a buyer for so many years, I probably had a little bit more knowledge in that aspect of the business than people just starting out. And if I hadn't, I might have made that decision. But because I was familiar with the process and had contacts, and I felt like it would limit our assortment and limit I really wanted to, I thought some of the prices on my competitors were a little bit outlandish. I really wanted to be a site that offered a more competitive price. And I knew that I probably couldn't accomplish that without holding inventory. A lot of times the drop shipper kind of wants to take a cut as well, and so it does make it difficult to be competitive in pricing. So it all kind of came again goes back to that model that I had at the very beginning of like, this is what I want to be. And so a lot of those early choices were made around, that this is what I want to be and this is what I think will work, and just going toward, every decision you make, like I said, really does kind of take you toward that vision.
Yeah, which is great because some people don't have a strategy when they first start out, but it sounds like, at least you had the vision. You knew kind of where you wanted to be, and it doesn't sound like it's shifted that much. It's pretty much been the same. It's just maybe setting up different systems for it, but kind of still keeping that same vision that you had back in 2008.
Yeah, we pretty much kept on the same track. And as we grow, we've added on rhinestone business and some other things, and that kind of started just to support the House of Bachelorette site. It was something that customers wanted, and it's interesting because keeping in touch with all those different needs and wants of customers, and kind of it does drive you, like if you do keep in close contact with customers, it does drive you down certain paths, and obviously very good ones. I haven't had a customer steer me wrong very often.
Oh, that's good. That's
Usually
great.
If one person wants to buy it, there's a lot more out there.
No, exactly. No, that's true. So if somebody wants to use this kind of business model, do you have any advice, sort of like, around if you want to hold inventory, what should their thinking be around that? And what's your process? What's your creative process around creating some of these items?
Well, I probably would start with going to a local trade show.
Okay.
Some of the vendors have pretty low minimums, maybe $100. And I would buy the minimum of all the items to start with, especially with the website, because the customer doesn't know how many items you have.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you could do testing of very small amounts, buy one piece. If they're willing to sell that to you, maybe you can buy a dozen if that's what you have to do to get a minimum. And throw it out there and see if anyone's interested. And then you can use that information to evolve your assortment. If they're really wanting napkins, but not really paper plates, you can get 10 more napkins, different kinds of napkins. It's kind of a learning process, but it's also exciting because when you get those first orders rolling in, you're like,
oh yeah.
I'll never forget the first order that I got on the first website. I was like, this lady. Again, it was kind of like when my first employee came to my interview in my basement. I was like, I couldn't believe it was happening. Like, this can't be that easy.
I know, it's surreal when you get that first order. Was it a big order, or was it,
It was a pretty big order, considering the very small assortment I had at the time.
Oh, right. No, that's true. And you're like, wow, this can really be done. This is...
It really can. The web is a wonderful thing, and it really is inexpensive to enter into the marketplace, and I can't recommend it enough to people who want to try something of their own.
Yeah, and want the flexibility to be able to if you're a mom, to be able to, like you said, wake up in the morning and when your son wakes up, you're there with that
it
type
doesn't
of
even feel like work, when you can fit it into your lifestyle like that. It really doesn't. Not like, work.
Yeah, right. And you're living proof that, you're a mom of almost a 2-year-old son, and you're building this business, and you're living proof that it can be done. You can run a successful company, you can be an entrepreneur, and then you could also have all this time, with your family, with your son.
I think my sister, she is 9 years younger than I am. She's a freelance journalist. She used to be on TV for journalism.
Oh.
And I would go to visit her, and I was always blown away by her lifestyle. It was so flexible, and I was, in the corporate environment, and I was very regimented and very long hours. And she was at a coffee shop in the afternoon, having coffee. And I was like, where were they when they handed out those jobs, and why did my high school guidance counselor tell me about that?
I know.
And it kind of occurred to me one day that, you really have to decide what's important for you. And right now, family is so important for me, and then prioritize around it. It's my husband asked me if I wanted to make this $1 billion company, and I said, not if I have to give up my work-life balance. I don't, it's more important to me to have that. So it'll be interesting as the years go by, how I keep it small.
Yeah, that is hard. Yeah.
It's already moving out of my home and into a warehouse and office situation. It's, a little bit different than when I was at home, all day. And I could see where giving up that work-life balance isn't something that I'm willing to give up anymore. It's just the way it is. But it's a beautiful thing that I can build a life around it.
Oh, I know. Yes, that's very true. And you touched on something that I think is interesting, and that is you are experiencing such amazing growth, and you're starting these other 2 websites that are very complementary to the House of Bachelorette. It sounds like you sometimes feel that pool of, okay, I'm at this growth level, but I kind of feel out of balance if we grow, to this level. When you hear the word $1 billion, that I don't know if that scares you. But what do you do when you sort of feel out of balance? How do you sort of get back into balance?
Yeah, I think, and I kind of do during our busy season. We have a season where it can get really crazy.
Yeah.
I've got a great support system, and I keep hiring people that are just unreal. They're so amazing. Almost everybody that works for me are, people in a similar situation. They're retired, they have kids, they want to drop them off and pick them up after school, and they're looking for something that balances in there and in a fun environment. And I think just having the support structure that I have built around me and my team, everybody that works here, we get to review time and they're like, we love it. I love it.
That's great.
You gotta pay them too much.
Something to consider. Yeah.
No, but it's really fun, and it goes back to, that's the kind of place I want to work too. It's like I don't want to work in some stuffy place where people talk behind your back.
Right.
That's the kind of place I want to work, where we're all laughing and we turn up the music and we dance and and we're having a good time and still getting the work done. So it's one of those things that you just kind of probably rely on other people a little bit more as things go on, and that's probably what I'll have to do more and more as the business grows. And as long as I keep building this team with the type of people that can really fit the company and where I want it to go, I think it would be great.
Well, I'm wondering, metrics-wise, how do you measure your success? People measure it very different. Some people measure, especially for online businesses, email subscriptions or just plain old sales or time off or time with their family. Are there things that you look at on a daily basis where you're like, okay, I'm going to measure this, I'm going to measure that, I'm going to measure this?
We, because with a new business, you start at zero and you don't have a lot of history. And every year, I make plans in the spring, and I buy to those plans, and they're usually pretty conservative. And every year I've had to scramble to get more merchandise because we've exceeded what I've set out as a goal. I find it difficult to plan. I really do.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. But I think that a lot of times what I measure it on is just whether I'm happy, whether my family's happy, and whether I feel like I'm dragging myself to a job every day, or whether I'm excited to come in and be here. And I haven't gotten over the excited part yet, so
It doesn't look like it.
So I think that's probably how I measure it. The business, of course, I always wanted to see growth and
Sure.
and success, and that means that we've had the money to go and launch these new businesses and see where that is. And part of the reason that I've launched them is because we do have such a peak and valley within our year in the bridal business, and I wanted my employees to have more work year round.
Yeah.
So they're part time. So, when you say I want to keep the business somewhat small, I do want my employees to have good work all year. So that was one of the reasons that kind of pushed me that direction, because I really, love my staff and want to make sure that we have plenty of hours. We've been like little squirrels in the winter, like putting away things for brides for the summer. But it's still going to be nice to have, a little bit more year-round business going on with the Sweet 16 party store and the Rhinestone Sash, which kind of does birthdays, mom-to-be, baby showers, all kinds of things that will last all year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, with these new businesses, I mean, you obviously have all this experience that you can draw on now to start these other companies. So is your process, if you think back about Bachelorette.com and when you first started that, is your process much different when you're starting this Rhinestone website or this Sweet 16 website?
It's very similar, I would say, because we've had some success. We're probably starting a little bit bigger than House of Bachelorette. I started the House of Bachelorette on such a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
So it's not even funny.
Do you remember how much you started with?
I think the initial website I paid $6,000 for, and that was a stretch. You don't even have to do that anymore. You could start a website now for under $1,000.
Oh yeah.
But at the time, I thought that certain things were important that anymore I don't think are as important. Having a custom coded site doesn't seem as important to me anymore.
Oh wow.
But I think all told, it was probably about $11,000 with all the inventory and everything.
Wow.
And that first year, I didn't take a salary. It was I kept reinvesting everything we made back into the site. I recommend that people don't plan to take a salary the first year. I think, if you're really excited about the business, that money will slide through your fingers with marketing, with upgrades. You'll see, as soon as you start a business, it feels like you start to see things that you'd like to evolve and change and improve.
Yeah.
That does cost money. And so I think it's difficult that first year to really pay yourself.
No, that's true. Yeah. Well, do you remember when you actually were able to pay yourself? How long did it take before you're like, okay, I'm ready to pay myself now?
Almost exactly a year after my site launched. So it was a while. And it felt weird to take that first paycheck and because it had been so long. And I kept thinking, certainly there's something I could spend this on in the business.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to have, a husband that supported me so much. And the crazy part about it was that we had, done our wedding and things like that. It was like being on a spending spree, I tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I get paid and I get to have a wedding.
Yeah.
It was having the ability to do that probably fast forwarded our growth, because I was learning leaps and bounds those first few months, and was able to continually to evolve the assortment and aspects of the website. And I remember, I had like wish lists of things that I couldn't afford, just let alone.
Yeah.
That first year, I really want this, I really want that, and handing it to the website developer and having him give me the price list, and I was like, what can I do for this month?
That's so funny. Well, when you first started making all this, when you started getting sales, and I think I remember reading, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2010, you had a $500,000 revenue year. Is that right? So it took you 2 years to get to that point?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what were you looking at back then? I mean, what tweaks did you make to get to that point? I mean, I'm sure sales started coming. You had a great website. You have done all the work. You had good assortment of inventory because you went to trade shows, and I'm sure you're building relationships with people that make these products and had your own ideas on that. But what were you doing at that point to even get to that $500,000?
All the little things. I was learning about AdWords and spending more money on marketing. I was building our, Facebook page, giveaways, coupons. Then submitting them to coupon sites. Just anything I could think of, ideas, anything I saw a competition doing, or changing different aspects of the website. I know. I realized that the customers were shopping very close into the event. I think I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
And I know that they had a lot of apprehension about what day that the delivery would come. And I know one of the big things that I splurged on was paying those web developers to add the date that the estimated delivery date the package would arrive, which wasn't part of the original design. But as soon as that went in, my sales went through the roof because they were shopping on Monday and they needed it by Friday, and they weren't quite sure, no matter how much I put in verbiage, that it took 5 days. Weren't quite sure they were going to get it till they saw that date, appear. And it's kind of learning things like that. I didn't know that they would be shopping so close in.
Yeah.
And then evolving, the shipping processes. There were lots of things we added so that we had more than one shipper. We shipped USPS, we shipped FedEx,
right.
Deliveries. How important all that would be to our customers, and then adding all that functionality. There's just a million things that came up, really.
Very true. Well, if you could give any, last tips for anybody that wants to start a company like this, do you have anything that you would offer? Either how to stay confident and keep working and hustling at it, or some mistakes that you made along the way that they could avoid. Any kind of advice or tips for these women out there that are wanting to start their own company?
I would say don't be afraid to start small.
Okay.
Every business out there started small. I mean, sometimes I felt like it was a little bit embarrassing to be, sitting in my basement working on this. I had been in a corporate environment, for heaven's sake. Why don't I have employees here doing all the work for me?
Yeah.
It's okay to start small. In fact, that's probably the right place to start. I look back and I wouldn't have been ready if I would have dumped, $100,000 in and just taken off running. It just wouldn't have been right for me personally. I think it would be difficult for most people, so I think it's okay to start small. Invest in your education, because as the business owner, you are everything to that business. I can't stress that enough. If you don't know it, then your business doesn't know it. So, I can't even put into words how much all those classes and the time I took was so worth it. And what else? Do everything that you can that's free, for heaven's sake.
So do it yourself.
There's a lot out there.
Uh-huh.
I think I had a friend that was starting a business, and I think I gave her a list of 100 things that are free. Most of it's marketing, but there's a lot of it out there for small business, and just do everything you can, and have faith.
That's awesome advice. Thank you for offering that to everybody that's listening, because sometimes it is hard. You have your rough days, and it's always good to hear that. Yes, I'm sure you do. I'm sure. So it's always good to get some encouragement and get some hope that you can do it through hard work and just spending time on it and learning. Listening to the customer and just staying out there. It's great advice. So for success, for sure. Thank you so much for being here and visiting with us and sharing your story. Like I said, I admire your story, and I wish you all the success in the world. And I'm going to post below this the other two websites that you've started, so everybody else knows those two, as well as the House of Bachelorette, so they know where to go if they're ever planning a bachelorette party. They know that they can get their supplies. Yes. So thank you so much. Yes, it is. Exactly. And you have lots of ideas out there on how to throw the party. So there's lots of good stuff on your website. So thank you again for inspiring all of us